now introduce the Ambassador Guisell to speak on Nicaragua. Nicaragua, as you know, has been attacked for a very long time, as most people will know, the way the United States supported the Contras to invade and mash up that country for many, many years. I think it was the International Court actually passed judgment saying that the US should pay compensation to Nicaragua. I don't know if you received it yet, Ambassador. Maybe you can inform us how that is going in your little talk as to whether you've yet received the compensation due you from the United States for the mashing up of your country by the Contras. Often we are seeing that what is happening with the rich countries is that, you know, there's one rule for them and one rule for the others. They sideline the law or ignore it completely, as in the case with Venezuela with the gold that was deposited in the bank. And they have this, you know, they choose to hold on to it and to give it to whoever they think, you know, might receive it apart from the government. So yes, we see that the banditry really of the imperialists when they behave like this. So thank you. Ambassador, please, can you present for us? You need to unmute yourself first. Sorry.
Okay, there you go. Thank you very much, Luke, and thank you for inviting me here today. And please accept and pass to all the members of the Caribbean Labor Solidarity and friends our gratitude and for your solidarity in our struggles and our path to eradicate poverty and continue developing a Nicaragua socialista and solidaria, socialist and in solidarity. In these moments of great challenges for humanity and of great efforts to promote peace and security in all points of the planet. Before I enter in the matter of, you know, the elections, you know, the recent developments, I wanted to say that no, the U.S. was condemned for the International Court of Justice for, you know, for their act for the war against Nicaragua, for all the 50,000 people who died during that war, and all the destruction it caused, and the economic hardship that endured Nicaragua during that war, during the 80s war, and the 17 billion that was awarded, they are still in debt. They haven't paid a penny. But I think that is one thing they will never forgive us. We have won the war against the United States militarily when Sandino won the war against the invaders in 1927, and then we won with the law in the hand, with the international law in the hand. So I think that's for a tiny Nicaragua, as Francisco always said, we are very proud of what we have done against the imperialism. So and that's why they wage a war against us, because they know we are an example of can be done. The other thing I wanted to mention is that on 25th of March, Nicaragua joined the International Day Against Racism, not only, you know, like on words, but actually on meaningful acts to bring the Afro-descendant people to the to incorporate it, to recognize them. They are part of Nicaragua, that they are Nicaragua, and they are now part of our fundamental protagonists of this new history of Nicaragua. And on that day, Nicaragua said that that in addition to the I'm quoting just a line about what we said in international organization. And he said that in addition to the unbridled ambition of the imperial powers and their perverse sense of superiority, it was their cruel need to discriminate, subjugate, and harm African people and their descendants, which fueled this genocide of more than 500 years. The crime of transatlantic African slave trade remains unpunished to this day, reduced to a kind of regrettable event carried out by a few people who lost their way, ignoring the fact that the slavery was and continues to be an institutionalized industry, a crime against humanity without comparison in the history of this war, and reparations to which the African and Afro-descendant people victims of such a barbarism are fully entitled to, continues to be an outstanding debt to European and North American countries, as European and North American countries continue to refuse to pay. We condemn the political and economic model of savage capitalism that legitimizes slavery, and we commemorate, and we are forging a new war with equality. So this, I wanted, because of what was mentioned before, I wanted to just read that part. And so now I am going to go forward with the topic on hand. So the Sandinista National Liberation Front on 7th of November 2021 concluded an electoral process that allowed for the ratification of President Ortega and Vice President Murillo and 150 congressmen and women among permanent and alternative members of the Assembly by the sovereign will of our people in free, democratic, dignified, and satisfactory election for the Nicaraguan majorities who exercise their right to vote in full freedom. In spite of US effort to sabotage the Nicaraguan elections through a mixture of economic, social, and psychological warfare, the election on the 7th of November are a tale of dignity and self-determination. Out of 6.5 million, almost 3 million Nicaragua casted their vote for the candidate of their choice, at each one of the 13,000 voting stations. The FSLN and President Ortega won a landslide victory in the November elections, with almost 76% on a turnout of 65% of the 4.4 million eligible voters, despite the US government and mainstream media campaign to delegitimize this election. Although Washington and its ally in the region showed the election was a fraud, preceded by a repression of the opposition, there was significant participation of the electorate. Moreover, despite claims that President Ortega ran virtually unopposed, his ticket was contested by 5 long-standing opposition parties. 7 different alliances participated in Nicaragua 2021 election. 5 national opposition parties, all of which were right-wing, and another regional opposition party on the Caribbean coast. And finally, the leftist Sandinista Front-led alliance, which itself consists in 9 parties. So if you sum a total, there were 6 plus 9, so 15 parties that participate in the whole election. On the November 7th, there were indeed 6 different presidential candidates to choose from. President Ortega was not even the first name on the face on the ballot. The number 1 was the presidential candidate of the Liberal Constitutional Party, which hold it's a very right-wing majority party. Western governments sought to discredit this electoral result by claiming the Supreme Council, Electoral Council, is unreliable, But Nicaragua has an independent, inclusive, and gender-balanced Supreme Electoral Council that is composed by different parties and for the first time has a historic representation of the multi-ethnic Caribbean coast and with 6 women. This election that they criticize use a very detailed voter register, contain the voter photograph, ID, and address is very secure in terms of the technical part. It requires the presentation of ID cards with QR barcodes, detailed biometric data, perpetual unique number for every single citizen. That is, every single ballot has a number of sequence, and all political parties had at least one electoral monitor in each voting station. There were over 175 monitors throughout all the voting stations. Anyone even vaguely familiar with the history of recent Nicaraguan politics can see that this 2021 outcome is highly consistent with both polling and past results, which were observed in that time by OAS, EU, and Carter Center. In the 2006 election, the FSLN got 72.44% of the vote, and PLC, the second one, garnered 15.3% with 68% of participation. The previous election in 2011, the Sandinista front won with 62.47% of the vote. Moreover, the results in the 2021 elections are unsurprising when one considers the opinion polling before the vote. The lead up to the vote of M&R consultors surveys consistently found that 60 to 70% of Nicaragua supported the Sandinista front and the government of President Ortega. In the 2021 elections, we didn't have OAS, we didn't have EU, we didn't have United States observers, but we did have more than 200 representatives from 27 nations that witnessed the electoral process. They saw well-managed polling places where all presidential candidates were listed on the ballot. They gave testimony that the process was transparent and orderly without incidents, unlike the voting process, for example, in the last election in the United States, where eligible voters can be restricted for the ballot or be forced to wait for hours to cast their votes, and with the possibility of all political parties to supervise the process with total freedom, ensuring transparency and within the constitutional framework of the country and the established international accepted democratic norms. They signed a joint declaration stating that they witnessed that the will to defend the peace and sovereignty of Nicaraguan people was expressed and defended by the political organization that participated in the process. Their account of the electoral process revealed the manipulations and lies concocted by the US and its corporate media partners and its regime change effort. But the cold, hard data did not interrupt the wave of disinformation flowing for corporate media across the world. Yet, the US and its ally and local lackey refused to recognize the legitimacy of the election and decided to punish the Nicaraguan people for not voting as the US wanted them to. A carbon copy of the US statement was issued by the European Union, Canada, and the UK government. The Organization of American States, which played a key role in the Bolivian coup in 2019, passed a resolution on 12th of November and has called for the election to be notified and for new election to be held. As a victim of US OAS meddling, Evo Morales immediately recognized the warning signs in Nicaragua and cautioned about the US regime change. He congratulated the people of Nicaragua. He said the United States is attacking the democratic will of sovereignty of Nicaragua, and that the victory of President Ortega is the defeat of the Yankee interventionism. I am quoting there. When US President Joe Biden demonized Nicaragua's 21 vote as an electoral pantomime, Morales retorted The only pantomime is acted out each day in the White House, where so-called presidents, instead of serving their people, follow the order of transnational corporations, the weapons industry, and the CIA. On November 10th, US passed the Renacer Act, an acronym for the Reinforcing Nicaragua's Adherence to Conditions for Electoral Reform Act of 2021, a regime change plot featuring the imposition of sanctions and to restrict multilateral financing meant to create misery for Nicaraguans. Sanctions are worked by other means. Sanctions kill. The modern day version is they are the modern day version of sending the US Marines. But Nicaragua has been a target of US aggression since the 1850s. As Luke said, the Biden administration attacks on the newly elected government and its effort to undermine the country's sovereignty is the last chapter in a long and sordid history of invasion, coup, and support for the US puppets. On January 10, the president's inauguration took place. The central event in the Plaza of the Revolution was accompanied by Sandinista celebrating in almost every town with big screen displays of the inauguration. When he has been sworn in with the presidential sash across his chest, President Ortega repeated his actions from 2007, 2012, and 2017. He took off the sash and then symbolically handed it to the people, to the pueblo presidente. The people are the president. He asked tens of thousands of Sandinistas gathered in the 153 municipalities of the country to swear to fight with all their strength to overthrow hunger, poverty, and backwardness. Let's go forward, he said, building peace to fight poverty, building peace so that there can be roads and highways, building peace so that family can feel secure, their children can feel secure, and their work, they can feel secure in having a dignified life. That is our commitment, Nicaraguan brothers and sisters. We are all in this, and this is why we say the people are the president. President Ortega made it clear that we will continue to carve out a new path of prosperity for the people. On that day, he also demanded the end of US blockades and sanctions of Cuba and Venezuela, the end of the attack of the Latin American progressive governments. On the morning of the inauguration, both the EU and the US announced new rounds of sanctions against Nicaragua. This was followed by UK. As per usual, this was done based upon vague concerns about democracy in the country, ignoring the fact that there was no democracy in Nicaragua until the Sandinista overthrew the dictatorship in 1979 and then held first free and fair elections in 1984. It also ignores the fact that Daniel Ortega and the Sandinista peacefully stepped down in 1990 after holding elections then. US and ISALE have intensified their perverse practice of imposing unilateral and coercive measures against developing countries, attacking their institutions, limiting their access to finance for development, undermining their economy, all of which is applied arbitrarily and lacks any legal basis. We have seen it in Cuba, we have seen it in Venezuela, we are seeing it in Nicaragua, we have seen it in many countries around the world. The United States government intends to impose its will on Nicaraguan people that 200 years ago broke the chains of colonialism, 88 years ago ended US military occupation, and 42 years ago demonstrated to the entire world that it will never again accept the yoke of oppression and tyranny. For the last 16 years, Nicaragua has been subject to intense hostility and aggression by the United States. Starting in 2007, when the Sandinista returned to the presidency, the unconventional war waged by the US has included the funneling of millions of dollars to opposition groups in Nicaragua, a fake Cuba TED in 2018, illegal unilateral sanctions, the 2018 NICA Act, and the recently passed Renacer Act, and the pre- and post-election USA destabilization plan called RAIN that began in 2020. Against this background, and in the face of continuing ill-informed and biased attacks by corporate media, in the last 16 years of Sandinista government, Nicaragua has achieved a degree of economic and social progress that is remarkable. Poverty and extreme poverty have been more than half. Maternal mortality has been reduced by 68%. Electricity coverage is now almost 100%, from 66% in 2006. The country has 90% self-sufficiency in food, and economic growth in 2021 was 9%. When you read the reports of Nicaraguan corporate media, even The Guardian, it's like visiting a house of horror. And yet, since 2007, with the FSLN in government, we have seen improved roads, the best 4 in Latin America. We have seen potable water from less than 50% to 90% coverage. Nicaragua is the safest country in Central America, and without a doubt, one of the safest in the American hemisphere, with the lowest homicide and femicide rates in the region. We have seen economic growth, free and quality education from preschool to university, reinstated access to free and quality health, with the best hospital network of Central America. Life expectancy has risen from 72 years in 2006 to 77 years today, equal to the US levels, and handling the COVID-19 probably better than any country in the hemisphere. With 58% of the 2022 national budget devoted to health and education, the FSLN government continued to implement policies which put the needs of the poorest and most vulnerable first. Jose Angel Bermudez, Executive Secretary, National Workers Front, the largest trade union in the country, commented on the FSLN election victory on 7 of November 21. He said, "The triumph of the Nicaraguan people for stability and peace is a triumph that will allow us to continue fighting against poverty and restoring all the human rights that for centuries the Nicaraguan oligarchy and imperialism denied to our people. This is a triumph of all human beings who love peace and dream of a better world." Yes, the Frente Sandinista had an overwhelming victory, but this is not because in any way or form the vote was manipulated, or the electoral process was manipulated, or was not free or fair. It emerged triumphant because it endeavors to meet people's needs. Because since it returned to power in 2007, has delivered to the people of Nicaragua over a decade of prosperity, a model of development that has restored our social and economic rights. I had a lot of examples, but I will only mention 2. And one is gender equality and social advances in the Caribbean coast. Today, 9 of 16 national government cabinet ministers are women. Woman head of the Supreme Electoral Council, the Supreme Court, the Attorney General Office, the Public Prosecutor Office, the Ministry of Defense and Home Office, and account for 60% of judges. Women make up half of the National Assembly of mayors, including the capital, the vice mayors, and the municipal council members. The headway made in gender equality is seen in the Global Gender Gap Index. In 2007, Nicaragua ranked 990th on the index. By 2020, we were in the 5th place, and we ranked number 1 in the Americas continent. We have closed the gender gap on education and health, and the country has the best performance in terms of women in government in the America. Women are the protagonists in the building of our society. The Caribbean vote for the FSLN was because of the restitution of the rights of the Afro-descendant and indigenous people in the North and South Caribbean Autonomous Region. Since 2007, we have implemented the development strategy of the Caribbean coast. This has allowed this region, which was marginalized and excluded from society for so long, to actively participate in the country's development process. We are strengthening the process of autonomy of the indigenous and Afro-descendant people of the Caribbean coast as a constitutional right. The native communities of our autonomous region and the Northern and South Caribbean, the Afro-descendants Miskito, Mayagna, Rama, Key, and Garifuna populations are owners of the territories and govern themselves with autonomy, always counting with the recognition of their language, cultures, way of life, and cosmovision in the development of their daily existence. Over 30,000 kilometers, 36% of the national territory of land have been demarked and titled in their favor. A territory larger than El Salvador and Belize combined, where more than 300 territorial and communal governments are periodically elected to exercise the right to use, administrate, and enjoy their lands and natural resources. The first indigenous agricultural university in Latin America was inaugurated in November 2021, located in the South Caribbean region. The initiative is unique in Latin America, and as it provides professional training to indigenous and Afro-descendant people who were taught to read and write in their mother tongue through the Yo Si Puedo program that, thanks to Cuba, we use it, and who completed their secondary education. A major new pier in Wilby, North Caribbean, was finished in October. The previous was destroyed by hurricanes in November 2020. For the first time, Bluefish, the capital of South Caribbean Autonomous Region, has universal potable water, and Bilwi, the North Caribbean, is connected to the national electrical grid. The work for development continued, but looking at before and today, there is no doubt, not a day has been wasted, not a dollar has been wasted, not a problem has gone unaddressed. These 14 years of the second stage of the Sandinista revolution have also been the constant reaffirmation of its institutionality, ending the era in which the institutions were dedicated to exclusive right of the latifundia. Today, they have progressively become the representation of Nicaraguan society. The people are the president. This is the base of our model of development of our democracy, with the people participating in every aspect, designing, deciding, organizing, implementing its future. Republican strategy Karl Rove famously bragged about the US. We are an empire now, and we act. We create our own reality. And while you are studying that reality judiciously, as you will, we will act again, creating other new realities. The FSLN, the Sandinista revolution, however, has demonstrated through its continued victories that times have changed, and countries like tiny Nicaragua chart their own future and create their own reality. Your support and solidarity are very important and necessary at this time. The evil commitment of the US imperialism and its ally to destroy Nicaraguan democracy and progressive forces and governments of Latin America and the Caribbean that threatens our peace and our existence is not unexpected, but must be vociferous opposed. There can be no compromise on the anti-imperialist stance. The shouts, the threats, the sanctions are in vain. Nicaragua is free, sovereign, in solidarity, and Sandinista. And there is nothing and no one that can change this state of grace. The people of Nicaragua stand firm in unity because we know that the fights continue. La lucha sigue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll join me in celebrating and thanking Ambassador Guisell for that amazing history and of the politics that is happening in Nicaragua. You say solidarity, and you're pleased that we join you, but we draw inspiration from the work that you've been doing in Nicaragua. And I'm sure what is being presented here will inspire many people to think, why can't we have this in our countries, in the region, in every region? When I approached you, I was mainly concerned that reading the corporate press in the UK and seeing the kind of misinformation that was being perpetuated by The Guardian other newspapers, and only because I knew of what was happening on the ground in Nicaragua, I felt many people don't have that opportunity. So that was my main reason for asking you to present here today. But you've also, you've done more than that. You actually presented how much the gains have been made in Nicaragua despite the sanctions. And for me, that is a very powerful statement, that you've become food sufficient to such an extent at a time when so many countries are totally dependent on food imported. In the Caribbean region alone, I think something like 5 million food is imported into the region. And you think, you know, this is ridiculous. We've got sunshine, we've got rain, we've got land. We're importing so much food from the US and other places. So food sufficiency for me is very, very important. You also mentioned the gender equality, and I think that is very significant and very important in terms of what the Caribbean countries can learn from. Sadly, from my own country in Guyana, just recently, a MP was able to, you know, sexually abuse a woman really by saying to her, you know, what she wanted was a dildo in reply to some questions she had put. And he was not sanctioned by the speaker or even by anybody in the house. He was allowed to get away with that. And it's actually repeated worse since, I'm made to understand. I will follow it up. But, you know, we can't have that kind of sexism within our government structures, and these people are able to get away with it. We think a great example in Nicaragua in terms of equality of women and the progress that women are making there. We congratulate you. But I'll open the floor for questions. So if anybody's got a question for Ambassador, please put up your hand or put it in the chat. I'll ask Omar, is there anything in the chat, Omar, in terms of questions?
I've not had anything come through just yet, but yeah, if anybody does have any questions.
Okay, any comments or questions? So we'll take a few and then, yeah.
Francisco's got his hand up, but yeah, any questions, please
Francisco,
do in the chat.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Francisco?
Yeah. This is a little very troublesome country because it causes so much trouble to imperialism that it couldn't be better. So thank you very much for that excellent presentation and so inspirational, Ambassador. It shows that it can be done, you know, no matter how poor you can be, no matter how small you can be, no matter what the odds are, no matter what the size of the enemy, we can do it. And you showed it can be done. Just two small things. Number one, I just read official information from the Nicaragua government saying that because of the conflict in the Ukraine, the extra costs on gas and gasoline are going to be assumed by the government, not by the consumer. You know, literally hot from the oven, like yesterday or today. That is an indication not only of these, you know, human-centered policies, but also of the economic strength. You couldn't do it without having resources. So that's number one. But I want to ask a question. I remember we had a conversation some time ago in CLS with you, Comrade Ambassador, and there was the issue of China. This has changed quite dramatically. And my understanding is that Nicaragua now has joined the new Silk Route, the Belt and Road project, infrastructure project of China. Are you in a position to give us more details about what it means and how good it's going to be?
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, because I didn't mention that because I wanted to focus more on one of the things that I was asked to, was the the issue of the elections and the gains of the revolution. But there are two important things that happened in 2021. One is that we left OAS. We renounced to be continue being part of that Ministry of Colony of the US. we're following these, the Venezuela and the Cuba government that has rejected to come back to OAS after being expelled in the 60s. So we are in that process. It will take 2 years to formally leave, but we are in that, we are doing that. The second thing that we did after is the OASIS, Organization of American States. Thank you, Francisco. And the second thing that has happened is that we restarted the elections, the relations with China, with the People's Republic of China. It was many years after the neoliberal, when the first time of the revolution, we had that relations with the Republic of China, very strong relations, very strong political relations, and started in the economics relation in the 80s. After the FSLN left the government, the neoliberals, the first thing they did was to cut the relation with China, the Popular Republic of China, and Taiwan came in, and we, the process takes time, and to reopen the relations is not among countries is not that easy. It has to be many things in place. So we did that last year, and as a result of that, we also practically on the date of the president took was sworn in on 10th of November. We signed an agreement with China to join the new Silk Road, and from there we have been. China has supported us, for example, with the COVID, with the vaccination against COVID. Many companies have come back to Nicaragua. They will be working in energy and renewable energy. And the priorities that we have is not. This is a relation that we value because it's of equals. We equals as a state, equals as independent country. It's not imposing what I want to do in your country. It's what Nicaragua needs to be done in terms of for its own development to eradicate poverty. So this is what it has happened through things since last year until actually the last visit was on 25th of March, when the company Power China came to see our needs, how they can invest in our to continue our path of be self-sufficient in using renewable energy to produce. We are now at the 70%. We are producing 70% of our energy from renewable. We want to get to the 90%. We don't want to be dependent on oil because we don't have oil. So that is what is happening at the moment. Many agreements have been signed to support, for example, education, and also with many becas. How do you say becas, Francisco?
Grants
or fellowships, or for Nicaraguans to go and study specializations and at university or postgraduate levels in China. And also to the support on not only in electricity, but also in health and the infrastructure, health infrastructure also. So we are advancing very quickly. It's not easy to have these agreements, to set these agreements, but there is there is a will of the country to advance fast, to deliver to the people of Nicaragua. And the other reason is because, as you see, I have said, we have US, the European Union, they are trying to strangle us. So we need a way out. We need also, friends who can help us. And China has decided that they can be that help, that country, that friend that we need to continue our development. We want to stop our development. We want to stop our development. We will do whatever it needs to deliver what we promised to the people, what the people president wants and deserve.
Thank you. Thank you for that extensive reply.
Oh, sorry.
No, it was very good. It just covered so many other issues there. That was fantastic. There was a hand up before yours, Gus. I want to give them a chance to come in with a question. It seems to have disappeared. Was it Ola? I'm not sure whose hand was up. Maybe it was by accident. Was somebody's hand there before, Gus? Gus, you've got your hand up in case you didn't know. You got it. Okay.
Can I say, Luke, there appears to be a comment made by Kevinua Alt about freedom and democracy, which I think is a very interesting comment. I don't know if Kevinoa wishes to put this question to Her Excellency, or if Her Excellency wishes to take up this question or this comment.
Let's take the comment.
Okay. Okay, well, comment. I'll read it then.
Please read it out.
Sorry. Oh, can you go on? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can expand. I mean, the question itself, I definitely would like answered. I think what it is and what I've been seeing. All right, first of all, my family are from Guyana and St. Vincent, so I've got very much Guyanese blood running through me. But the question I have is around these, what we often hear around socialism, communism being bad, evil, and capitalism, liberalism, especially American liberalism, being good and espoused by Western media. And so we have these like two camps of good and versus evil. And I just wanted to see if the speaker could just kind of expand on how it played in Latin America, because within Latin America, what I understand is, especially with the America being so dominant in the way it intervenes in other Latino countries' politics, and how a lot of the people in the countries feel about these ideas of freedom, or their understanding of what freedom means, but they don't fully understand, because if you look at what America talks about, or how it behaves with its own people, especially Black people, voter suppression, and limiting the rights of its own people to participate in democracy, i.e. voting. I just wanted to understand more about how is it seen and in Latin America, in these countries. So I'd be really interested to know more about what everyone's thoughts are, to be quite honest.
Thank you for that question. Okay, I think you heard that, Guisell, so I'll leave
Thank you. I don't know if I pronounce it right. Cavinoia? Is that? Cavinoia. Okay. I think it's an interesting question. I think, these difference, the whole machinery, propaganda machinery has confronted, and has put socialism as the evil of the war. And many people believe it because that's what, the sacrosanct and press is telling every day, every minute. But what we are doing, I am going to talk about Nicaragua, because every country, democracy is not just one fit for all. countries are, there are international standards, but every country has to develop their own path to democracy, their own way of democracy. And in the case of Nicaragua, for us, democracy is empowerment of people. It doesn't, it is the liberty to choose our path, to choose where we want to go, to choose who is going to be the next president of the country, and not despite if the US like it or not, if the left, even the international left like it or not. It is not up to the other, to the people of the world to decide who will rule Nicaragua. It's Nicaraguans' decision. So for me, and from the point of view of Nicaragua, that is the democracy. We have to be very aware that that there is a demonization of what socialism is. But those who have gone to Cuba and those who will like to go to Nicaragua and to go to Venezuela, what they have seen is that the socialists and these progressive governments, what they have done is to give the power to the people, to restore the true and basic human rights that were denied. It's not about the democracy for a few, it's the democracy for the whole of the people. So that's that's my take on that. I don't know, Francisco has a lot of experience and he's a professor. Maybe he can help us a little bit more on that. That question, which is very important, and it's about thinking. It's about, the theorizing and the reality, the theory and the theory about socialism.
Thank you for that, Guisell. I think it's important. We notice that, capitalism, depends on continuous growth, and we're faced on a planet with finite resources. We're running into more and more trouble with climate change. The system that depends on us producing more and more, there's a conflict there, and they're clearly, we cannot have both of them. And often we see capitalism needing wars to fuel the economies. And so right now, we know that the industrial military complex is working at a very high level, creating weapons of destruction, whereas often, as we've seen from many socialist countries, is to produce and do things to actually help humans rather than destroy humans. Okay, thanks. We'll leave that there. Gus, I think your hand was up, so maybe you've got your question.
No, it wasn't really.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't really so much of a question, but a comment, really.
Please.
I mean, I want to thank Ambassador Morales for her presentation. As an educationalist, I'm very aware of the extent to which Western imperialism, and particularly the British colonial system, divided us as a people. It was for me, as a person who was at school with him in Presentation College in Grenada, particularly heartening to see Maurice Bishop embrace One Caribbean. And he was absolutely committed to the reunification of the different peoples of the region. Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and ourselves in the Caribbean. And it seems to me that as we contemplate today what's happening in Ukraine in relation to Russia, I have been intrigued, bemused by the reactions of the West to Putin's role or stance on Ukraine. Now, I mean, I'm not an apologist for Putin. Let me make that absolutely clear. I believe he's a butcher. He is responsible for war crimes and for genocide. But having said that, I think the West should remember that the US protested vigorously, Bay of Pigs and all of that, to Cuba and its association with the Soviet Union and issues around missiles and how far Cuba was from the coast of the United States and so forth. And the West chooses to have what I call convenient amnesia about these matters, in the sense that having gone through all of that stuff and precipitated and prolonged a Cold War for decades in relation to Cuba and the the Soviet Union, it is now saying that Russia does not have a right to determine that Ukraine should not join NATO and have NATO weapons on its own borders, just around the corner from Russia. And it seems to me that we ourselves could get very easily caught up in that discourse about democracy and sovereignty and the rest of it. The West has been so guilty across the decades, and before the Bay of Pigs and after, in massacring, assassinating leaders of democratically elected leaders of nation states. And yet they want to have us believe that they are on the moral high ground and can claim sovereignty in terms of morality and the right of people to determine their own destiny and their own future, etc., when it suits them. And when you consider that even Obama, of all people, didn't do anything about sanctions against Cuba, it really reminds us of what that whole geopolitical game is about, and how, unless we unite ourselves, people in the Caribbean, across the different languages, and people of progressive tendencies across the world, we will always be subject to these kinds of hegemonic approaches and decisions made by people of the West. So I want to thank you for your presentation, and it reminded us very much in a timely fashion of where we are just now.
Great, thank you very much for that, Gus. I think it's important to remember that they share hypocrisy in the way in which they do it. You know, they're quick to call out war criminals, and we remember Blair, and we remember Bush, and we remember the destruction they have wreaked upon, you know, these countries that supposedly had weapons of mass destruction. And as you rightly pointed out, you know, America would not tolerate the the Soviet Union sending a missile to Cuba, so that could be launched onto America. They were ready to go to another world war for that. Yes. Okay, we leave that there because we digress a little bit away from the two issues for today. One was really trying to counter some of the stuff that's happening around the region in terms of elections and fair elections and so on. So thank you very much again, Ambassador Guisell, for your presentation.
Can I say one more thing before I leave?
Okay, please.
The thought of Gus just and just remind me that we are a Caribbean country, and we have reclaimed, the efforts we have put as a political, as foreign policy, the links at the top level, the links with our Caribbean brothers and sisters. And we have participating as a member of the Caribbean State Association. We have linked with through the ALBA TCP with our Caribbean brothers and sisters. We have a vice minister level. We have the relation with these countries at the vice minister level. We have some ambassadors too, but we have a special president representative at ministerial level. So that's how important we see the relation with the Caribbean and how fundamental is for the development of the Latin America. As they said, we have been divided for many things, but we need to come together in order, because the development has to be equal for everyone in Latin America, not just one country or another. No, we need to go forward together. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for that. Okay, I think we'll close on that discussion there now and move on to our next speaker, who needs no introduction really. Professor Gus John has been an activist, a social political activist in the region, in the UK, for a very long time. My first contact with him, I think, was probably with the New Cross fire, and that's going back some time. And also, I think, previous to that, around education in Hackney, where you've been the head in some ways in Hackney. But certainly throughout the years, you've contributed in discussions and campaigns and, the things that matter to us, especially around, schooling and education, the alternative systems that you have set up and maintained for many years, being involved in many the cultural and social developments in the UK for a long time. So the list goes on, but I won't attempt this here, Gus, but I'll invite you to now take the floor. Professor Gunn. Gus.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Luke. Colleagues, it's a pleasure to join you again. I want to make some comments on this child Q issue and say what I think it represents for us as particularly Caribbean people and people of the African diaspora. I don't want to go into too much detail about what actually happened to child Q. I believe those details are pretty well known by now. I want to place it in a wider context about schooling and education in Britain, about our insertion into schooling and education in Britain, and about how we represented and protected our own interests in the early period of migration to this country, and where we are now. I believe it is too easy, really, to look at an incident such as what happened to child Q in that school in Hackney and see it as an isolated incident, or as, if you like, the zenith of the barbarism that these people are capable of, and not situated within our own struggles from the period when we came here after the Second World War to now. What I want to do in this short presentation is to remind us of those struggles, remind us of the fact that we did not simply sit down and resist and protest, but we built institutions to sustain us against the perpetual, perennial assault of the system upon us, our dignity, our rights, and what have you. and how this child Q situation fits into all of that and what we have to do about it. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that from the moment we got here after the Second World War, 1950 onwards, my uncle from that wonderful little village in Grenada in which I was born, Concord, came here in 1951 on an island scholarship, and he did a PhD in science and engineering. My father came here in 1957 and was a worker in Lyons factories making cakes and so on and so forth for Lyons tea shops. My mother joined him in 1960 and worked as a hospital worker, cleaning floors, giving people teas, etc., at Acton General Hospital in West London. And my brother, the only one of my siblings who actually attended school in this country, went to Twyford Secondary School in Ealing and had the most miserable of experiences in that place and at the hands of the British police, the Metropolitan Police in Acton, Shepherd's Bush, Ealing, and so on. So when I came here in 1964, I came not as a worker, not as a member of the reserve pool of labor that colonial Britain had preserved and created in the Caribbean. I came here as a student of all things, theology. I was en route to becoming a Roman Catholic priest before I discovered how misguided I was and how corrupt the Roman Catholic Church was and all the rest of it. But when I determined to leave the Roman Catholic Church and immerse myself in political activism, it was principally around the issue of education. Because so many of our children were coming here to join parents who'd left them behind, as I had been left behind, for a number of years, a varying number of years, with relatives, grandparents, aunts, godmothers, nenen, and everybody. What I discovered was that those children were being treated in the most ghastly manner by schools in Oxford and Oxfordshire. A disproportionate number of them being sent to school for the educationally subnormal. A disproportionate number of them being condemned as non-academic because of the home languages that they spoke, and so on. I mean, you would be familiar with most of that. But we didn't just complain. We determined that we could not let the schooling system in this country do as it will with our children. We had to intervene. And although we had no power to influence government in terms of what schooling as it was emerging should be in the light of 2 world wars, the relocation of people from the Caribbean, Africa, and so on, we felt that we could do something ourselves. We started the Black Supplementary School movement. As a student of theology at Oxford, I started a supplementary school on Cowley Road in Oxford in 1965. And so it continued, because we were determined that we would not allow English backwardness and racism determine the capacity and potential of our children. So roll on many years, and what we found is that Black children have been roundly designated as the section of the population causing trouble for Britain in terms of law and order, discipline in schools, and the rest of it. And I need not tell you of the phases we've been through with police stop and search, the sus movement, the sus campaigns, where the 1824 Vagrancy Act was used to criminalize young Black people simply for walking along the streets. If you looked into a BMW too tough, the police would arrest you because they thought you were about to steal the damn thing. And that went on for years until we ourselves campaigned against it. Now, the point I'm making is this, that although our parents came here with the highest aspirations for us, they came believing that education was the route to social mobility. And that it didn't matter whether they, like my parents, were illiterate, functionally illiterate, their children could do better and should be given the opportunity to do better. That's why they came. When in 2018, some people were getting ready to go to Westminster Abbey and celebrate the arrival of the Empire Windrush in 1948. One bishop of a Black-led church had stupidly said that those who came on the Windrush in 1948 came seeking adventure, as if they had decided to don their khakis in Grenada and St. Lucia and Jamaica and so on, and come to Britain on safari. The most stupid, backward, illiterate argument anybody could make. Okay, and so the notion was that we came here and we built up modern Britain. Nobody asked the question, what did modern Britain do to us after all those years of exploitation, genocide, lack of reparatory justice, lack of reparations, and the rest of it? So we need to see the Child Q incident against that backcloth of the demonization of Black young people, the association of our children with criminality, rebelliousness, lack of respect for authority and rules and so on and so forth. So what happened to Child Q, everybody thought was extraordinary and it was barbaric. It violated the young child, which is true. But then we tended to forget that it is that same approach, that same culture, particularly within the police, that gave rise to so many hundreds of Black people being killed while in police custody. So Child Q, in one sense, represented our George Floyd moment. But there'd been many like her long before. And you could name them. All of those people who are remembered by the family and friends gatherings, rallies, demonstrations every year. All of them, if you look at any one of them, from Christopher Adler to Roger Sylvester to Sean Rigg, any one of them, you see the same pattern, the same indifference that Chauvin demonstrated in Minnesota when he had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, is the same indifference and nonchalance towards Black lives that the police have demonstrated in every one of those hundreds of cases of police deaths in custody. So what we have to ask ourselves is this: why is it that even if Britain knew the extent to which imperialism and colonialism led to a culture within the society, a mindset which suggested that whites were superior to Blacks, Blacks could be exploited and killed with impunity, why is it that when Britain decided to import us as a reserved pool of labor from across the Caribbean, and all of those people from other parts of the so-called Commonwealth, they did not determine that it had to do something about the way in which racism and imperialism had impacted upon the psyche of white people in Britain and was running through the DNA of this notion. That's the fundamental question. It has never been addressed. So we found ourselves constantly having to protest, to do repair, to prevent our children from being absorbed and damaged by that schooling system, while they went ahead, regardless, trying to suggest that we were the aberrant ones. We were being indifferent to good standards and the rest of it, and we needed to be brought into line. The schooling system joined the police in waging war on our children. In 1973, with John LaRose, Irma LaRose, Michael LaRose, Albertina Sylvester, and many others, we started the Black Parents Movement in North London. That didn't come from nowhere. It came from an incident involving John LaRose's two sons, Michael and Keith, at a school in Hornsey, where the police harassed them, sought to brutalize them for no reason whatsoever. And John and the other parents determined that they needed to do something about it. That's how the Black Parents Movement started, followed by the Black Youth Movement. And soon after that, at the Keskidi Center, which some of us will remember, in King's Cross, off Caledonian Road, we had a conference to really launch the Black Parents Movement. And there we declared that independent parents' power and independent students' power was the key to change in education and schooling. Not long after that, we had a situation where a year 7 student joined Dalston Mount Secondary School off Shacklewell Lane in Hackney. And from the moment he joined the school, he was the victim of incessant bullying. He was one of a handful of Black boys in that comprehensive school. His parents made frequent visits to the school in the first and second terms of year 7 to complain about the bullies and to share their concerns about the impact of bullying on their son's well-being. The boy was sleeping fitfully. He was having nightmares and dreaded going to school and having to mingle with the bullies. The school dismissed the parents' concerns. That's now 40 years ago, okay? Arguing that they do not have evidence of bullying behavior in the school, that the boy could not produce any witnesses to corroborate his accusations, and that they, the school, would simply invite the wrath of the parents of the bullies if they were to take action against them. One week later, this boy was told by the bullies that they would get their elder brothers to come in and ambush him on the way from school and kill him. So he goes home terrified, and next morning he packs a small kitchen knife in his bag and came to school to, in his words, defend himself against what was to come. During playtime, he told some of his friends who were worried about his safety, the few white boys in that school, that he had armed himself with this little kitchen knife. One white boy heard him, went to tell the bullies, what they had heard. The bullies went to the teacher. The teacher then got this child's bag, searched it, and found this little kitchen knife. They called the school police, who arrested him, took him down to the police station without informing his parents, and charged him with having a bladed instrument. And for that, he was taken to court, and in court given a suspended prison sentence. The school did nothing about the bullies. It did nothing about the fact that this child was totally petrified. And their excuse to us, within us being the charity that I run on school exclusions, Communities Empowerment Network, their excuse was that he knew, this child knew, the school had zero tolerance of physical violence and of weapons, and therefore he had no right to determine that it was okay to pack this little kitchen knife and come to school. They ignored totally the bullying. They ignored totally the racist bullying, and the fact that they gave no support to the child whatsoever or his parents, because when they complained, they dismissed it. Okay, roll on to child Q. This child, the teacher said they smelled cannabis. Whether that was the case or not, there are rules that the school has to follow. The school has to operate as everybody else within the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. And on my count, 7 principles of those conventions were violated by that school. The child's best interests were not taken into account. The child's right to dignity and respect and human treatment was not taken into account. The parent's right to be informed of what the school was going to do to the child was not taken into account, and so on. 7 of them. And I, for one moment, cannot understand why people believe that that was a case where adultification, i.e., seeing Black children as more grown up than they are, was an issue. There was a 15-year-old child doing an exam. She was sitting in an exam, taken out of that exam by the school. They searched her. They found nothing. Rather than leaving the matter at that and taking her word for it that she had nothing, they then tried to call the resident police officer in the school, who was off duty because of COVID. They rang him and he said, call the police, which they did. And these 4 police officers came racing down to the school and searched the child in a manner that we all are familiar with now. Now, the question is, if they had that child interest at heart, why did they determine that the appropriate thing to do was to have police officers come and search her, in spite of the fact that they searched and found no evidence? Why were they so intent on proving that she had something hidden within her body, for God's sake? Yeah? So my point is that it is because of that mindset about criminality and criminalizing our young people that that child was subjected to such violations. And after all of that, and preventing her from going to clean herself up in the toilet, she was expected to go into an exam and perform appropriately and according to her potential, as if nothing had happened. Totally barbaric. So the question then is, after we've expressed our anger, our visceral anger, righteous anger at all of that, just what are we going to do about it? Because we cannot depend upon the school who allowed that conduct on the police to do anything themselves to those teachers. The teachers were acting within a culture in which Black children were being routinely criminalized. We cannot depend upon the academy who employed that head teacher and those teachers to do anything about it. And I come back to what I said about we starting the Black Parents Movement in 1975. We have lived through a period where schools have routinely denied the rights of our children. Human rights, rights on the Convention of the Child. And after the 2011 uprisings in Tottenham and elsewhere, following the police killing of Mark Duggan, the Home Office, the Metropolitan Police, and the DFE determined that they were going to take a more draconian attitude towards Black young people. They set up the gang matrix. And many children who had nothing whatsoever to do with gangs were put on that gang matrix, and the data was shared with head teachers. So we, in the Communities Empowerment Network that supports children excluded, found a spike in the number of kids who were being excluded from school for all sorts of stuff. If they wore a particular kind of uniform, or if they had their hair in braids, it was suggested that they were supportive of gang culture. And children were being excluded for the most spurious of reasons, because the Metropolitan Police and the DFE and David Cameron and Theresa May determined that they had to wage war on Black young people and on the streets, in the communities, and in schools. But we as a community roundly did very little about that. And many head teachers whom we, including me personally, as a caseworker in CEN, protested against in terms of the illegal exclusions of Black children, were saying to us, well, Gus John, you could say this, that, and the other. Our parents, our Black parents, support what we're doing because they do not want these young thugs affecting their children's capacity to forge ahead and realize the potential. So we have to deal with that reality. We cannot assume that all Black children are a homogeneous group. There are those who have supportive parents. There are those who deal with criminality in their homes. There are those who go to school smelling of weed because weed smoking is a regular routine practice within their homes, whether they're Rastafarian or not. In the same way that coke snorting is a routine practice in the homes of many of these white people who come to work clad in their ties and their whatever it is, presenting themselves as respectable citizens, upholding the values of British society. So we have to be clear about this. Not all Black parents are on the same page as us. There are many, particularly middle-class ones, who want to protect their children as much as possible from our children, whom they see as potentially providing the environment in which their children cannot thrive. And so what I believe needs to happen is this. We demonstrated outside Hackney Town Hall 2 Sundays ago, rightly and righteously. But the question is, after we've demonstrated, after we've vented our anger in relation to what happened to Child Q, and demanded that the head teacher, the teachers involved should be sacked. What then do we do? Do we go away and wait until the next such event occurs, as it surely will, sooner rather than later? I mentioned the Caesar sisters in Hackney, Dalston Mount. In 1981, Child Q is happening in 2022. And in between, we have not built a movement of Black students. We have not built a national movement or union of Black parents. There are many more Black teachers now than there were then. They may be organized as a Black teachers network within the National Education Union, but they are not organized as a Black teachers forum to assist the organization, the self-organization of Black students and Black parents. So if we are not going to allow our children and their children to have to deal with this nonsense, this abuse, these violations routinely year after year, we've got to ask ourselves, how can we organize politically, collectively, to bring about the changes we need so that whether it be Zawadi or whatever his name is, the current education secretary, who is trying to tell us that teachers should have a more nuanced view of colonialism and imperialism and the genocides that caused, and not see the genocides as the main issue, but see the advantages, whatever he defines them as, that came to us as Black people. We have to organize ourselves to contest those kinds of narratives and ensure that nobody in the DFE, in any individual academy trust, premises or whatever, can continue to take liberties with our children without knowing beforehand that they would have to account to us for that. I'm calling, therefore, for an urgent mobilization of Black students acting in their own right, in their own interests, an urgent mobilization of Black parents acting in their own interests, independently, and an urgent mobilization of Black teachers, whoever their employer is, to ensure that all of those children for whom we've made Britain their home have not got to continue to experience those kinds of degradations and to struggle so that their own children won't have to suffer them either. We have a historical responsibility, my friends, at this time, to understand what that Child Q issue means, place it in its historical context, as I've tried to do in the last few minutes, and see what our role must be in terms of challenging what the government has allowed schools to do, empowered them to do, with no accountability whatsoever to the people whom we elect to represent us at local levels. Let me end by saying one thing. I was asked by the Anti-Academies Alliance to review a book in the last 3 weeks. The book is called About Our Schools. It's written by Tim Brighouse, who was twice a chief education officer, Birmingham and Oxford, and Mick Waters, who was the chief executive of the Qualifications and Curriculum Authority. Those two eminent educationalists wrote this book 603 pages long. A doorstopper of a book, I promise you, which I plowed through diligently to write this review. They covered 45 years of policy making around education, 45 years of schooling practices, schooling reforms, and the rest of it. And nowhere in that book, except in 3 paragraphs, where they talk about student safety and reference the murder in 1986 at Burnage High School in South Manchester of Ahmed Ullah, a Bangladeshi student murdered by Darren Colburn, a white English working class student. It is only in that context that they mentioned anything to do with race and education. So 45 years of schooling in Britain after the Second World War. And they do not even deal with the question of race and class in education and schooling policy. Shameful, disgraceful. And that tells us a lot. It tells us the extent to which we are totally marginalized and made peripheral to the discussion. And it tells us where we're headed unless we ourselves determine to take responsibility and do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Gus. I think you deserve appreciation for that wide-ranging discussion. Early on, I wrote down why, you know, you're asking lots of why are these things happening? And it's good that you put it in the context. And before I continue, I noticed there's another Luke Daniels, and there's putting some questions in the chat, which is nothing about me. Sharing, I don't know. Is there another Luke Daniels there? I don't know if we've been hacked or something. I don't know who, unless there's another Luke Daniels that's out there.
Maybe it's your alter ego, Luke.
Because I didn't write any of those questions or comments that I've seen there. Just wanted to point that out. But Omar, maybe you can check that out for me.
Yeah, you know what? If for the sake of ease, I can rename you just something very brief, like Luke Daniels 1. But anyways, let's continue.
Okay.
Okay. No, there's a hand up for that, Luke Daniels. I don't know. Do you want to?
There is something strange happening, Luke. I did notice Gus came on as Margaret Busby, but he changed to Gus. I don't know.
Yeah, I had to just fix that one up. We had 2 Margaret Busbys at one stage.
Okay.
Daniels, but anyways,
Okay, the Luke Daniels hand is up, but I'll leave it for
Okay.
let me just finish what I'm saying here with Gus, because, you know, let's not be distracted by being 2 of me on the same screen. Yes, I think it's good that you put it in that, frame it in that racial context, because, you know, much of this would not have been happening without the racism we've endured, and because of slavery and that brutalization that's gone on for so very long. And in this system that we're living in, that we know that one of the, and it has been said that one of the reasons that this happened to Child Q was because of the racism in the police. It's good that we also noticed that, you know, this had to be some racism operating within the schooling system, within the education system, for this girl to be singled out and dealt with in, as you put it, the barbaric action that they took. And so I think, you know, we need to be looking at this in a systemic way, in how we tackle it, how we deal with it. And you put 3 questions. How do we involve the Black student, the Black parent, and the Black teacher in dealing with this issue? I'd like to think that Caribbean Labor Solidarity as an activist organization that said, you know, we don't just have discussions, we will discuss it in our executive, and we meet next week to see where we might want to go with this question, and probably consult a bit with you on this through Gus, as one way of saying that. So before I open the floor up to questions, maybe you can tell us how maybe you think we can help, Gus, and then we'll open up to other questions.
Well, yes, I mean, thank you for that. Let me say this. I think one of the most evident and powerful interventions we've made in terms of resistance to the systemic oppression we face is the Black supplementary school movement, which we started in the 1960s and came of age. Its focus altered within the last, I would say, 20 years or so, because rather than concentrating on things like decolonizing the curriculum, which we were doing as way back in the 1960s, academia and policymakers and the rest of it started talking about it in those terms only recently. But when you really consider what we were doing, it's precisely that we were decolonizing the curriculum, enabling our children to have a better sense of self, knowing where they came from, where they were situated right now and where they were going, and believing in themselves and in their high aspirations and the capacity to realize those aspirations. And you know, we had lots of people, university students, sixth form students and so on, coming and giving their time and introducing children to literature, to history, etc., which they never knew and never associated Black people with, right? Now, part of the problem, I think, is this. We have imbibed the narrative that the state has produced and propounded about ourselves, our capacity, our uselessness to the society. And we've taken sides. The Black community, which is never homogeneous, has really taken sides. There are those of us who are radical and revolutionary. There are those who are middle of the road, liberal, and there are those who are patently reactionary. And what we're finding within this government just now is there are two sets of Black people, or Black and global majority people. There are those who desperately wish they were white, like the Kemi Badenochs and so on of this world. And there are those who are apologists for imperialism and colonialism, like the current Secretary of State for Education. I mean, how could anybody talk such nonsense about you should give a balanced picture of imperialism and colonialism? It wasn't all bad. Who are you telling that to? All of those people who've gone to meet their maker as a result of genocide? All of those who were displaced as Caribs and Arawaks and Amerindians in the territories from which we've come? Who are you speaking this nonsense to? Are you going to tell the Jews of the world, not of only of Britain, that they should have a more nuanced approach to the Holocaust and consider the situation from the point of view of the Third Reich, for Christ's sake? Shut up. Okay. The Education Secretary should be told to shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think I'm saying is, let us remember that however much we might feel integrated, however much we might feel that, you know, we are here and the rest of them are there, left behind and otherwise, we are never safe as Black people until such time that we make sure that all of us are safe, all of our children have the capacity to go forward and realize their potential and be the best that they can.
Yeah.
So these are okay. We in this company particularly, we all know about the dialectics of liberation, all right? So we don't have to spend a lot of time on that.
Yes, yes.
What I'm saying is, in terms of the current situation, there are some very practical things we can do. Parents of children in every single school should be able to meet together, listen to their children about their schooling experience, including their experience of having to worry about going home safely because others like them are minded to stick knives into their bodies. Listen to all of that, and together, find ways of supporting those children, demolishing those practices and cultures that rope them in and have them hating themselves and one another, and do that systematically. There's no reason why we should not have these parent forums in every single borough and coming together nationally once a year to share experiences, to debunk what the government is trying to do in these schools and the expansion of the academization program and the rest of it. There are more children of us occupying alternative provision, pupil referral units and the rest of it than any other ethnic group in the country. We can't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Nor can we believe that there is some genetic predisposition on the part of our people to murder and mayhem.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Gus. I think from a consent perspective, which I've worked with violent men myself, one of the things that I think is being played out here is the way the internalized oppression operates. And sometimes we call that internalized racism, when Black people see themselves as violent, not as good as, hate themselves in some ways. And some of that is playing out, I guess, in these knifings and stuff that's happening. So educating children about the true value of the, especially Black children I'm thinking about here, about their ancestors and about Africa and about things African, and in the way in which they can start to take pride and to understand that they come from a tradition of people who are powerful, intelligent, creative, and
yes.
all of those things that
Yes.
will help.
Yes.
I was actually, just to show how cooperation is really needed in tackling this issue, I worked at one school. Funny enough, was a Grenadian head, Tony Lamont, sadly, I should say the late, who passed recently.
Yes.
And Tony was just a wonderful man, a wonderful head teacher who actually headhunted me in a way to do some work at that school because they were having problems with exclusions. And he felt it was important to keep these Black boys, mainly it was in school. I started working a few hours a week, as it were. And by the time I left, I was doing a couple of days and seeing many students. It was a very rewarding project because, from it, I could see that I needed to work with the students to find what was going on for them. Soon became clear that I had to work with the parents to assist and support things that weren't happening right at home. So I worked with them. And then with the head, I said, look, I also have to work with some of the teachers because they were not contributing in a positive way to the problems. So we had a holistic approach, working with the student, working with the parents, working with the teachers. But then again, that was because that was a Black head who was concerned about those Black boys. For one reason or the other, he was, maybe he came to retirement age, he left. And then we had a white head, and she came with a totally different approach to exclusions and to what was going on in the school. And of course, the funding suddenly ran out and I had to leave. But it's just an idea of what happens and what kind of problems we have. But there are solutions, and we will talk about them. A couple of hands are up. I thought I saw Dennett's first, so I will go to Dennett, and then Tweed was up.
I think Dennett might have gone.
So we'll take.
Yeah, Dennett's just stepped away momentarily. So if you'd like to go with the first person.
Okay, okay, so we'll start in the order in which I said. I think Tweed was putting our hands up for time. So Tweed, if you come in now, and then we'll go to Hill Pancras and to Frank Murray. Am I seeing that right?
Thank you very much to Gus John and her Excellency as well. So I just wanted to, I'm just speaking from a perspective of my short experience working in the men's prison in West London, where 158 languages are spoken and a high proportion of my students were Caribbean. So I was teaching about Indigenous education, Indigenous cultures. Okay, so the point I want to make is I'm just the battle to get to be okay. The concept in Indigenous cinema is called narrative sovereignty, and also so the education for the children. There's a culture. I think the closest thing I see is possibly the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools, where people are teaching their culture in their way, with giving Creole or whatever other languages, because the education system in this country is so colonial still. It's so colonial, and I'm not sure that's really appropriate for in many subjects for people that have such a strong culture and a strong history. So that's really, I don't know who wants, if that's a valid point you think or not, but I would like to see more people, narrative sovereignty, controlling the curriculum for the, and I don't know if the University of West Indies, some of their curriculums for the community are adopted over here, but the education system here, I think it fails so many people from different cultures. It doesn't represent their cultures. It doesn't teach their cultures correctly.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, I will take a couple of questions and then Gus, you try to reply to them all again. I saw Diana, but in the house. I saw her hand up a little while ago. So after these two, then we will have Diana, but welcome. So the next person with a question there is, I mentioned
Hill Pancras, if you like.
Hi there. Yes, hi there. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I feel that knife crime is actually being used as a means by the state, by the racist state, by the government, and its various institutions, to really continue the process of marginalizing, I think psychologically destroying our community. I think there is a battle that is going on that is not just physical, that is done by, for instance, impoverishing the Black community through economics, through the way the job market is operated, but it's also happening on a psychological level, and I would go as far as to say it's being done through the music. The people who are benefiting from such things as grime and hip hop and all that sort of stuff that's going on are largely the big corporations, the white DJs, and the various presenters, and you have like the young people who are feeding and taking on board some very, very destructive lyrics that's coming out through the lyrics of some of the music. I'm not saying all the performers, the Black young performers, rappers are engaged in this, but a substantial number are, and it's about killing, it's about destroying, it's about demeaning women, it's about very negative, a very angry language. So that on that level, psychologically, in terms of like education generally, we've got things such as children being sent to isolation booths. People think that does not destroy children from within. That does, because children who cannot cope with the standard curriculum, which is a one fit for all, using the zero tolerance policies that now operate in the school, what they're doing is that they're actually throwing children out repeatedly into these isolation units, and slowly these children will begin to act more destructively. And then there you have it. Children are actually pushed out, excluded into APs. APs are now being brought into academies. They're now going to have them on site. So there you have it. A lot of manipulation to, oh, we're not excluding children, because they're on site. And what will happen with the stats? Okay, just want to say one other thing. No More Exclusions. I'm a member of No More Exclusions, which is an organization that is working to abolish exclusions in schools. We have a parent forum, and we struggle to get parents to participate. We raise all these issues, but parents are not engaging. We now have taken the next step, which is actually to get on the street. So we have a stall now that is going to different parts. Hope it will continue. That is actually now talking directly to parents, and I would say the response has been good, because we're taking names of people who want to get involved, but also young people are coming up to us. We're handing out flyers. We're handing out our parent guide. So we need to be tackling this, not purely through, social media. That's important, but we need to be getting on the ground. We need to be in the communities, i.e. say, for instance, Islington, where we had the city college there, students walked out. We need to be in those places where we can directly communicate with the community. Islington particularly responded really well to having a stall and having direct contact, talking to us about their experiences and wanting to listen to us. So I think we need to take things on the streets as well. Sorry, I've gone too long.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. That's very important. Put something in the chat so we have information. We can be in touch with you. Only because of time, and we're really starting to be pressed with time. I think we've gone over when we usually finish. I'll bring in Frank. We will try and keep it short and put your question, because Gus will have to reply to these. So we've got Gus and Diane.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. As Gus, when Professor John started his piece, he mentioned the American situation with George Floyd, where the policeman felt at ease with his foot on George's neck for however long it took, Then, we see that the same thing here with your child Q. The police felt at ease with strip searching a young girl, and where everything she done was wrong, but she felt at ease as doing it. And as we speak now, there's another video that's going around of a young woman being tossed to the ground by a police. So it's happening again. And that's the new thing that everyone will be after. Why are these people feeling so easy just carrying out this thing? Then we'll start jumping through hoops to correct that situation. But still, the same people keep doing the same thing. So isn't this really a white problem? What are the white people doing to change this situation? Because they are too at ease doing these things, and they will continue doing these things until they decide that and realize what they are doing wrong. Last week, one of my colleagues, a white colleague, broke down on stage, and when he realized that he was looking at this thing all wrong, he's now looking at it from a perspective where he realized how racist he was, and all the time he didn't think he was. But he looked internally and he found, he saw it. So I'm not saying we shouldn't stop doing what we're doing, keep doing what we're doing, keep working with what we're doing. But I think the other side, it's a yin and yang. The other side needs to start doing more to correct the situation they're putting us in. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Are you happy to take one more now, Gus?
Yes, of course.
Ask that? Yes, okay. Diane, please come in. Diana,
can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear. Aya, how are you?
Well, I just want to thank Gus for his excellent presentation. There is a lot I could say, but I'm going to try and keep it brief. I want to remind people that the strip searching of this child happened 2 years ago, and it's taken this length of time for it to be revealed. A lot of people are genuinely shocked, but in fact, the strip searching of child Q reflects institutional racism in the school system and with the police that has been in existence for many, many years.
Yes.
I think that in some ways it's harder to bring people together and mobilize them than it used to be. The Black community has never been homogenous, but I think in 2022 it's less homogenous than it's been. The only final thing I'd say, I mean, in Hackney itself, people are very energized and upset by what's happened. The school students in the school concerned had their own demonstration 2 weeks ago. We had an event outside the town hall where many people came who wouldn't normally come to a political meeting. And what I personally am trying to do is to organise a sort of event or a conference to bring Black parents together to empower them and see if we can build on this renewed focus on institutional racism that the Child Q events have shown, and see, as Gus says, actually, if we can mobilise and build on all the work that's been done over the decades and try and confront the racism in the school system and also the racism of the police. I had a meeting, this is my final point, I had a meeting with the borough commander in Hackney about the Child Q case last week. And he said that he refused to accept that the Metropolitan Police were institutionally racist. But he said, oh, maybe the events around Child Q, maybe it can start a conversation about racism. This is now 30 years. Yeah, you see what I mean? 30 years after I came into public life, the borough commander in Hackney said he wanted to have a discussion about racism. I rest my case, really.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, Gus, I'll turn over to you now. You got a few questions there.
Yes. Well, I mean, well, first of all, let me start with Diane. Thank you very much for joining the conversation and for your input. Diane has been singular in her efforts since the middle 1990s, really, to empower Black parents. I well remember that soon after I ceased to be the Director of Education in Hackney, Diane started the Hackney Schools and the Black Child Annual Conference, which was very empowering, highly motivating for Black parents who were at a loss to think of what to do about what was happening to their children. And that morphed, particularly after Ken Livingstone became Mayor of London, into London Schools and the Black Child. I think it's regrettable, really, that annual initiative did not continue. And what we're seeing now demonstrates really the need for it. And let me tell you why I think it was so important. It was important because individuals who were within their schools fighting a lone battle to bring about change and representing children and parents with enormous empathy and a sense of in a sense, what would I call it? A sense of frustration at how little they could do as individuals. They found the forums of the London Schools and the Black Child conference enormously uplifting, energizing, And everybody went away from those things every year with a renewed sense of purpose and of hope. And I think whether it's in that particular form or not, we need to get back to that. And what I'm arguing for is, if you like, many versions of that in every single borough and every single local authority in the country, whereby parents listen to children, listen to what is happening to them in schools. We've had no input whatsoever into how the government raced along with the academization programs. The academies do what they like. They stubbornly apply zero tolerance policies and so on. And our children are always the ones suffering from all of that. Now, this thing can only continue if we let it happen. And what I'm saying is that we need to ensure that our children know they are being listened to by us as parents and people within communities and so on. And that they can depend upon us and our experience and knowledge to forge their own battles within those institutions and collectively within any one borough or any one multiple academy trust or whatever. And that we ourselves have a more compassionate and understanding attitude and approach to parents. One very quick anecdote. I was talking to a colleague, ex-university lecturer, highly talented person who had spent many years advocating for Black parents in other capacities, mainly to do with health. And when I said, I would love you to become a trustee of our exclusions charity, CEN, her attitude really shocked me, because what she was saying is, these children, you know, in other words, they are too rebellious, too hopeless. They don't conform to authority, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And there's no way that I would join an organization that is about supporting them and challenging schools' right to exclude. And I thought to myself, this epitomizes, it typifies what is wrong with us as a people. In other words, once my child is doing particularly well, or I am able to physically relocate to a place where Ofsted tells me there are high-performing schools, I could forget about the rest, which is totally contrary to what we were used to and what we built in that period from 1945 till about 1995. So, you know, I very much take on board what Diane has said, and I want to publicly congratulate her for her own efforts in spite of the bloody backward Labour Party and its record on education. I want to congratulate her for keeping the flag high aloft in terms of what we needed to do as a people to preserve the education of our children and fight for their education rights. On the other issues, you know, I totally agree that we need to think in terms of how we are distanced, if you like, from the general narrative. I talked about this book about our schools and how ridiculous and useless it is. We I think need to rediscover the power that we have as a people and use that power in a manner that actually enables us to lay better foundations for the current generation of children going through schools and for those who would follow them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gus. Okay, I think there was one other hand up. Dana, did you have your hand up at some time? Were you?
Yes,
you have a
yes, I
question?
did. But
Yeah.
yes, I did. But people have asked some very interesting questions, and Gus has made some really phenomenal recommendations. What I wanted to say was not related to what Gus had said, but to inform people about activities that we were doing. So I don't know if you want to say a few more words before you let me in.
Yes, okay. Before you do that, we'll take the one other question. I see Elda is up. That'll be the final question because we're well over our time here, and then we will do a close. So you can do your piece then, not if that's okay. Okay, so Elda, can you put your question to Professor Guisell?
Yes, yes. Hi, thank you. Yes, it's much more a statement than a question, but I want to thank Professor Gus for the superb explanation here for us and the presentation. We need to have more encounters like that in order to learn and to know how can we go forward on this situation. I am also a governor in a local school, and I am the only Black one there, and it's quite hard to have input and says and see what's happening on the school. And every time I try to challenge most of the time, I cannot have the say because I'm only one there. And most of the time is dismissive, like, oh no, it's not really like that, or it's not exactly how you're saying, you know, let's just go forward, let's see what's going to happen, and all that on the base of racism happening on the school. What I want to say is the only way for us to keep going forward as a Black diaspora community here in UK is for us to have an united front. Till we keep talking from different platforms, from separate organizations and groups, we're not going to be strong enough to fight this racism happening with our children, our grandkids, with everyone. So we need to organize a Black front here and fight those organizations. The Department of Education is extremely racist. The police is extremely racist. We are seeing adultification of our children. We are seeing our children being abused psychologically, being abused physically, and we cannot let this keep going. We cannot keep this going. Of course, our Black MPs have a big part to play on that as well because they represent us. But I don't think it's something they can do alone. As a society, as organizations, we need to come together because then we're going to be able to see change, and then we can ask and say to this country, we want change and it needs to happen now because they need us. We are the foundation of this country. We build the economy of this country, and we can no longer let our voices not be heard. And when we say, we need to make sure they will hear what you are saying and change will happen. Was only that I want to say. And thank you, Omar, for inviting me, and thank you all.
Thank you. That was well said. Gus, I don't know if you want to respond to that, but I can smell a conference needed here somewhere, sometime coming up to discuss all of these issues.
Seriously, Luke, I think we do need a national conference on this, really, and a conference where, you know, we're not just talking about the problems, but can actually bring to the table the sorts of initiatives which people are taking wherever they are. And let us remember, you know, we're talking about Child Q and Hackney and Inner London. There are parts of the country, I'm talking to you now from Cardiff in South Wales. There are parts of the country where there are isolated groups, I won't even call them communities, groups of Black people with children smelling hell in schools, and parents totally bewildered about how to address those situations. The level of ignorance there is in the country, Middle England and beyond, about the matters that we're talking about is unbelievable. After all of those years since 1945, And the government is responsible for that, because the government has never made it clear that as a result of colonialism, imperialism, and the rest of it, schooling and education must have a key function in terms of educating white Britain about itself and the ravages of imperialism and colonialism, never mind people like you and me. So we have to understand that we are differently situated. We are differently configured as people in communities. And we need to, if you like, reach out from the center, so to speak. If you were to see London and its boroughs, particularly the 12 in the London boroughs, as a core of all of this kind of activity, we need to reach out places where you never imagine. And one of the good things about a conference is that one would be able to bring all of that together and think seriously about how to build a national organization so that we are not atomized and people don't see us as being splintered, and can be held to account for what is happening in Shropshire as much as for what is happening in Hammersmith or Hackney.
Okay, thank you very much, Gus. You've made the point very well, and I think we would definitely will have our discussion on the executive about what our next steps will be, and certainly a conference looks a great idea to me. Okay, we've gone well over the time we usually run, so I'm trying to close things out now. So thank to both speakers for really enriching discussion and information. And I think the mere fact that we're so much over time says how much this session has been valued. So to our main speakers, Paul, we had Francisco, Professor Francisco, Ambassador Guisell, and Professor Gus John. Thank you very much. I think we can do a round of applause
Thanks, Luke. Thank
for
you
our
so
speakers, our main speakers.
Thank you very much. There's one last thing I just wanted to give
thank you.
to Dennett very quickly just before we
Yes. No, I haven't forgotten Dennett. Dennett, please come in with your question, and then I'll do some closing remarks, and we'll go.
Okay, very quickly. I'm sorry everybody for taking up your time. I'm sure you've got things to do. I've just posted something on the chat. CLS has gone from strength to strength in the last few years with people coming on board and helping, but we need more people. So, sorry, it seems that I've lost my picture. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We can see you as well. Yes.
Okay. So I've put how people can become members or renew their membership. If you're renewing your membership, it's probably from about 3 or 4 years ago. Please go to that page and see how you can do it. Any questions, please contact me or Raphael. Raphael has given me the task of helping in membership. And so that's what I'm doing on his behalf. The other point I'd make is that next month, we've got a session which is transcontinental. I've provisionally entitled it From Cape Coast Castle to Colston. We've got someone who is a historian working for the Ghana Museums Board at Cape Coast Castle, which, as you know, is the start of the terrible journey of our kidnapped African sisters and brothers before they were trafficked to the work camps in the Caribbean and the Americas. And we've also got the possibility of one of the Colston Four speaking. So this arc of kidnapping and enslavement and death can be examined at our meeting next week. So watch out for more information. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Dennett. I think I wanted to say that thank you to, all the participants, all the people who have come to the meeting. We wouldn't exist without you. It really is crucial that you turn up and support us in what we're doing. We feel encouraged. We've got a lot of big issues coming up. We think big in some ways and about how we can make this world a better place. Although the Caribbean is central, we do have our vision cast even wider. We've got some issues coming up, as Dennett has just said. Reparations is for slavery and native genocide is always on the agenda. We bleed for Haiti and for the injustices that Haiti has gone through. We continue to fight with that. We want to keep developing, defending all of our revolutionaries in the region. And also we look to perhaps a stronger political union in the Caribbean, which is a discussion on federation that sometime will be coming up. We've already got Ozzy, I don't know if he's in here, he spoke on one of the meetings for the University of London, and we hope that he will speak to us about federation. We will have some discussions on that. So please, thank you. Thank everyone again for joining. We get to say goodbye now, and see you at the next meeting. Thank you all. Thanks. Bye.
Very much to everyone attending.
Okay, we'll stay back for
Thank
the
you so
EC
much.
members if you just hang in for a minute.
Yeah, we'll hold on for a little bit longer.
Thanks. Thank you, Guisell, especially that you weren't too well. Thank you.